Well, hello everyone, Scott Sylvan Bell coming on from Sacramento, California. It's April 10th, 2016, 1:45 in the afternoon. Perfect day to talk about sales training and perfect day to talk about your presentation. Now, I want to share something with you about your presentation you should take a look at only after you've mastered the basics, okay? So here's the thing. A couple years back, I took a look at my process and said, look, I don't want to sound like every other salesperson on the planet. I don't want to look like every other salesperson on the planet, especially for my industry. How do I modify things and change them up and keep it so that it's novel for the buyer that they want to pay attention? So first off, this is a normal sales presentation, generic for most industries. People go in and they try to build rapport. Then they go in and ask questions. Then they do some sort of story, and then they give a demonstration, and then they talk about money, and then they close, okay? You got to know that almost every single presentation on the planet for most industries is going to follow along on those lines. Now what if we took the information we had and took it like a deck of cards and took that deck of cards and modified it and moved everything around, okay? So each one of these big chunks represents an amount of time that you dealt with either rapport, questions, stories, demonstrations, and closing, okay? So just because it's the closest, what if I took the closing and I broke it up into smaller sections, okay? And I did the same thing with the money, and I broke the money up into smaller sections. And then I did the same thing with the demonstration, and so on all the way down the line. And what if I took this entire process and moved everything around so it didn't look like a sales presentation? So, I don't know, let's just start that I start with questions, and then I talk about money. Now, one of the cool things about talking about money up front is everybody's scared to do it. They want to drop a price bomb. And now a price bomb means that as you go through a sales process, you're going to wait to the very end, and now we're going to drop a price bomb. But the problem with that is the entire time that you're going through the presentation, that buyer is saying like, how much is it? 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 Right? And for them, it creates a challenge because they're not paying attention to your presentation. They're thinking, how much is it? How much is it? How much is it? You know, why doesn't this guy just get to the point? But if we move it up to the front and move it to the front and just basically talk about it in a standard like, hey, here's the ranges. And I can, I got packages at 10,000. I got a package all the way at 250,000. We know it's going to fall somewhere in between. That's really going to be up to you. Okay. And then we talk about rapport. Now, rapport is typically done wrong. And a lot of times, buyers, and especially people who buy all the time, get tired of salespeople coming in asking the same questions over and over and over again, and they really like it when you just get to the point. Now, if you do in-home sales, this happens too, because it's going to really help you out. If you deal with most buyers, if you just get to the point at first and then get to the rapport, just a couple minutes later, you're going to be okay. Now, one of the things that happens to salespeople is rapport really tricks them out in their head, and they go into friend zone, and that means that they're having a tough time asking the questions that they should. They're like, I'm really uncomfortable asking my friend this question. It's going to trick you out in your head. So if you break rapport up into smaller sections throughout the sales process, it can really help you out. Now, one of the cool things that you could do is find Tom Vizzini and Kim McFarland at essential-skills.com and learn about flagging and anchors, and that would be really cool for you because it would really help you out and you would get some really cool insight. You could join their gold member club. It's like $30 a month. I get nothing for it. I'm not an affiliate, but Tom Vizzini, Kim McFarland got some really cool stuff that'll really help you out with anchors and getting to the rapport and making things so much faster, okay? So then you got stories, and once again, you can break this stuff up into smaller sections, and then you can give your demonstration, give some more questions, move into some closing questions, build some rapport, tell some stories, and then close. So, I've been listening to a lot of Perry Marshall the last 8 months, and he's got the Swiss Army knife for marketing and the Swiss Army knife for, let's see, buying AdWords. This is kind of the Swiss Army knife for a sales process. Why do it the traditional process and go the same route and look and feel like everybody else? Why not move things around after you've mastered the basics? Because if you try to do this from the very beginning, it's going to take some time. Now, I'm going to give you some tips on how to make this happen. Closing really is going to be difficult for most people to put up front, so I would save it for a couple steps back. And closing doesn't need to be the traditional, we have to close everything now. It just could be a small closing question. Now, I'm not a huge fan of always be closing. It shouldn't be uncomfortable and it shouldn't be weird. It could be like a small trial close, just small, right? Or it could be a reversing. If you listen to a lot of Sandler sales, you could use some reversing instead of actual technical closing, and it'll really help you out. Now, it's going to take some time, some energy, and some effort, and a couple of days or a couple of hours. I would set some time aside and figure out how you're going to move your process around and figure out what you're going to do after you've mastered the basics. So, one of the best things that you can move towards the front, towards the very front, is going to be money. And then, after the money, take a couple paces back and then do a report. And just know that these are small slivers. You can move a whole bunch of them around. You can replicate them. I know that a sales presentation that's mostly predictable is mostly boring. And if you could keep your presentation and it's novel and different than everybody else, you have the people's attention. And when you have somebody's attention, it's so much easier to get them to buy from you than when you sound and look and feel like everybody else, okay? So go through, we got rapport, questions, stories, demonstration, money, and then closing. There might be some other stuff that you can move around in there, but typically closing's not to be moved up front and rapport is not going to be moved up front because that's what everybody else does for the rapport, not for the closing, okay? So go through, figure out what you can do with your, I'm gonna borrow a term, I'm taking this from Perry Marshall, I gotta give the guy credit, Swiss Army knife of sales. Now figure out how you're gonna make it happen, once again, after you've mastered the basics. Now, if you could do a small favor for me in the box down below, leave a comment, question, or story, that would be fantastic. To the right or to the left, there's a subscribe button. You know what you gotta do, you gotta subscribe. And then, you can send it out to all your friends via StumbleUpon, I think the button's right here, Facebook, the button's right here, Twitter, the button's right here, Google Plus, button's right here, LinkedIn, it's like right over here. Scott Sylvan Bell, we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Aloha.